Becoming a widow is already difficult enough as it is, but there's a little tax trap that a lot of people aren't aware of where a little bit of planning could go a long way to save you a lot of money and avoid a lot of unnecessary heartache, anxiety, and frustration with taxes. We'll tell you about that widow's tax trap coming up next. Welcome into All Things Retirement. Ben George with Anthony Aulffo, certified financial planner and the founder of the Cardinal Wealth Group. And Anthony, this is a topic that, again, on the estate planning side, some things to be thinking about, but this isn't something that comes up all the time for people and oftentimes get overlooked, which is a conversation you had recently that really kind of spurred this conversation, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We do. I'm sure we'll talk more about the mechanics, but it is something that we do test for with our clients as a part of our financial planning topic. But we did run into a newer client experiencing what we're going to cover as a widow tax trap.
Yeah, this widow's tax trap, not something that you might be familiar with, but again, some planning, some careful planning can end up saving you a lot of money along the way. So again, as we get into this, remember, you can always go to cardinalwg.com, start your Cardinal success journey and begin talking through some of these things, begin the planning process and make sure you are a good fit to work with Cardinal Wealth Group, because this is, again, some of the careful planning that gets done. This is something that not every planner is doing, but making sure you're doing everything necessary to take care of you and your family is so important. So let's talk about why this matters, Anthony, this widow's tax trap. If you want to start with kind of explaining what it is and why it's so important.
Sure. Yeah. What had happened was that we took on a client pretty recently, and they were a married couple that were together for over 30 years. And unfortunately, the one spouse passed away. And kind of fast forward a year later, and their first tax bill as a single filer, because they used to be married filing jointly, jumped by nearly $9,000 a year in income. So this jump is what we're kind of referencing as the widow tax trap, where basically you go from married filing jointly to a single tax filer, and it increases your tax rate, even though your financials haven't really changed. So not everyone is going to be affected the same way. But it can vary. Some retirees won't see any change, and others will see some modest effects there. So again, we're not trying to put fear into people, but it's just one of these areas that you can test in a financial planning process, so you can simply understand when one spouse passes, what are those effects from a financial standpoint, how the tax rules shift or change, and what are some of the decisions that you could have maybe made prior to something like this type of event happening. It was, since they became on board to us, it really was something that we weren't able to plan ahead for, because something like this generally will take years in advance to plan for.
It's interesting because, I think logically you would say, well, we're lowering the income. Things should only get easier from a tax standpoint. But as you point out, that's not always the case, right? And again, that's why we're talking about this and pointing it out, because you do need to do the careful planning. It might not affect you in a huge, significant way. It could, right? Which is why you want to plan. But kind of explain how the mechanics of how it actually works and how do you get to this point and why it could be a big problem.
Yeah, I'll kind of run through it. So, I mean, retirement income may drop a little bit, but it doesn't necessarily drop proportionately. So your Social Securities, your required minimum distributions, and pensions may stay mostly the same. So, for example, with this married couple, they had $140,000 of income and paid about $18,000 in taxes a year. When he passed away, their income only dropped down to $128,000. So it was only about $12,000, $14,000 difference. But now she became a single filer. Her tax bill jumped to $27,000, which is a $9,000 increase. So over 15 years, that you're going to pay about $135,000 in additional taxes. So this is that widow tax trap in action. Income stays similar, but tax brackets essentially shrink, and the results are, a higher cost to the surviving spouse. Yeah. So there's some planning opportunities around that for sure.
Yeah, let's get into those because that could be, I can't imagine the burden. Obviously there's a huge emotional impact that losing a spouse, but then the financial burden of that, of having to figure that out, then actually having to increase those payments has got to be tough. So let's talk through some of those planning opportunities for someone that wants to be proactive and make sure that they help protect their spouse. What's some things you can be doing?
Yeah, the first thing is obviously setting up a financial plan that kind of tests these things. It's not the most fun part of the financial planning process where we'll talk to them and say, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, we're going to kill you each off today and at a future date in your financial plan, just to kind of see where some of those different risks lies. And so if we do that process, we can identify that, hey, this could be a situation where even your income stays about the same, but your taxes are going to increase quite a bit. So what are some of the planning opportunities that you can do? Well, generally, it's the required minimum distributions that stays the same that puts them into this higher tax bracket. So one strategy kind of that has the biggest impact would be Roth conversions. Doing, small, consistent conversions of traditional IRA funds to Roths can reduce the future required minimum distribution, essentially shrinking the taxable income for the surviving spouse. The second thing, if you have enough time and you're working with somebody to help them understand this, or just explain to them like tax diversification, having these different types of accounts. Common financial advice is always to put everything into these pre-tax accounts, which again, saving is number one goal. So that's great. But if we can take it a step further, thinking a little bit about not just our family today, but the family in the future, as to why it might help to maybe utilize some taxable accounts, Roth accounts, and pre-tax accounts to provide some flexibility for later. Those would probably be the things that I would be thinking about most in terms of planning areas.
Okay, good. Again, you can go to cardinalwg.com, begin that planning process, have these kind of conversations with the Cardinal Wealth Group. Are there any mistakes that people commonly make here that we can try to avoid?
Yeah, I think, again, keeping too much in the pre-tax accounts without doing any Roth conversions is number one. And doing small, consistent Roth conversions along the way can go a long ways. Understanding your future tax bill, understanding how required minimum distributions, or RMDs, affect this surviving spouse in the future, and just misunderstanding how Social Security benefits shift after one spouse passes. Those would probably be the three main ones that stick out to me.
Again, that Cardinal Success Journey, you can begin that process now. And I'm assuming, Anthony, when somebody comes in and talks with you and they begin working with the Cardinal Wealth Group, these are things that are probably core to what you do, right? The conversions, the tax diversification, all these things are part of that planning conversation you're going to have.
Yeah, I would tell you this is one of the topics when we do go over with them. It's like a light bulb, like, oh, we never really thought much about that. While people come in with one or two things on their mind that they want to discuss, our job, I think, is to turn over other stones that they maybe haven't thought about. It may not have any difference or impact from a tax standpoint. And other times, like I said, it could be a modest change worth taking some action over.
And again, how early should you begin this? Is this kind of a thing where you're about 10 years from retirement, let's get on this, or can you wait a little bit later? What's typically the time frame for this?
No time like the present. So I would be thinking about these things as soon as possible, right? Because more time that you have, the more time to make those changes. And as time kind of moves on, there's going to be less time to make those adjustments. Like the family that we met, really, there wouldn't have been much that we could have done at this point. Sometimes you're just assuming that risk and hoping for the best. But if you give yourself more time, you have the opportunity to make changes.
All right. Well, look, the widow's tax trap, it may not be as significant for you as it is for someone else, but even if the financial impact is not catastrophic, understanding this blind spot, making sure that you are comfortable with where you stand, right, that you're prepared, is going to give you more confidence, right? Make sure that you understand that you're in control of your financial future and you're going to feel better about it. This is what Cardinal Wealth Group does every single day with their clients. So make sure you get in touch, cardinalwg.com. We're going to put all the contact information in the show description as well. Make it easy for you to get in touch and begin that Cardinal success journey for yourself. But hopefully this brings to attention something that's very important, especially for those that are married. You want to make sure you are buttoned up and on top of this. So thanks, Anthony, for breaking this down for us. We appreciate it.
Happy to help, and thanks.
Information provided is for informational purposes only and does not constitute tax, investment, or legal advice. Please consult a qualified professional before taking any action.